Thanks for clicking! A large portion of Canadians are putting off buying a home until the Bank of Canada cuts interest rates. This according to the media's presentation of a recent poll coming from the Bank of Montreal.
You're running out of time.
Indeed, over the past weeks and months, we've seen a plethora of polls reported on by the media, showing that home buyers are just waiting in the wings, waiting for the Bank of Canada to cut rates, at which time a horde of home buyers will be jumping into the market. We saw one from LePage, and the media told us that 51% of buyers who had put off their plans will be jumping back into the market when those rate cuts come. We saw one from Durham just a few weeks ago, showing that 26% are waiting for rate drops. And then, of course, we have the most recent one from the Bank of Montreal, showing that 70% of potential homeowners have put their plans on hold until the bank cuts rates. So 51%, 26%, and 72% are all waiting for rate cuts.
It adds up.
Indeed, given the divergence in the numbers, something is definitely going on here. Either A, there's a problem with the polls themselves, or B, there's a problem with the reporting on those polls.
Yes.
So what I want to do today is go over those three polls showing that Canadians are just waiting for rate cuts before jumping into the market en masse, take a look at how those polls were reported, and then discuss some implications going forward. It is the beginning of the month, and with that we are eagerly awaiting the release of April's real estate data coming out from the local boards any day now, and we'll obviously have an update out on that data on this channel. Click like and subscribe if you want to get those updates, but for now, let's get into these polls. On to the polls. First up, the most recent one coming from the Bank of Montreal, which showed that 72% of aspiring homeowners are waiting for rate cuts before entering the market. The poll was widely reported, with all of the news outlets stressing that would-be home buyers, those who planned on entering the market, wouldn't be doing so until we get interest rate cuts. Which obviously begs the question, if it's 72% of home buyers that are waiting for those rate cuts before buying, then how many respondents in that poll were aspiring home buyers?
It doesn't matter.
Well, for that, we have to go to the actual poll, as none of the articles listed bothered to link to it, and in that poll, we find that only 39% are aspiring home buyers. So, that's 39% of the 2,500 adults that were contacted, or about 975 people that are aspiring home buyers, and 72% of them, or about 702 people, are waiting for the Bank of Canada to cut rates before buying, which is still fairly substantial, except that only 13% of that 39% planned on buying a home in 2024, and another quarter may buy in 2025 or later. So, of those 975 Canadians who plan on buying a home, only 126 and a half of them, or about 5% of the sample size, plan on doing so if those rate cuts come in 2024. And 243 of them, or about 10% of the sample size, plan on buying in 2025 or later, which doesn't really tell us anything.
Don't say I didn't warn you.
In none of the widely publicized articles was it mentioned that only 39% of respondents were aspiring homebuyers, nor was it mentioned that only 13% of them, or 5% of the sample size, planned on buying in 2024.
We only got a week.
Does anyone look at these articles and get the impression that we're only going to see a 5% increase in demand over the next year if the Bank of Canada cuts rates? No, these articles paint a picture of something much more substantial coming to the market. Next, the Durham poll, which, not as widely reported, but reported widely enough, pointing to a market that is about to take off, with 26% of respondents planning on entering the market when the Bank of Canada cuts rates. Durham CEO Martha Balance said that the data showed, with so many waiting for the Bank of Canada to cut rates before they enter the market, it's clear that the expected interest rate cuts in the latter half of 2024 will bolster the pent-up demand for housing. Yet, there are two big problems with taking this poll to mean there's a lot of pent-up demand ready to enter the market. First, the poll only surveyed 1,000 Canadians, all of which were members of the Angus Reid online poll, where respondents are paid money, prizes, gift cards, etc. for answering surveys.
Are they hiring?
And while we can instinctively question the validity of paid survey results, sample bias, etc., we can also look to the research on paid survey data. The Pew Research Center found that these kinds of surveys can produce misleading results, often overestimating fringe beliefs. For instance, if we were to conduct a poll comparing life satisfaction with the ability to lease a Range Rover and only sent those polls to the usual suspects, the results would probably be overwhelmingly positive, much more so than if we sent the polls to normal people. And the second problem is that the 26%, that which is being reported by the media, that which Valence said will bolster the pent-up demand, are 26% of respondents that are waiting for rates to drop before they either buy or sell. And we get no more further breakdown other than that. We don't know the breakdown of that 26%. It could be 25% sellers and 1% buyers. Judging from this data, the headlines could have just as easily read, "There's a lot of pent-up supply coming to the market." But that wouldn't exactly fit the narrative now, would it?
I would never do that to you.
And finally, very, very briefly, the Royal LePage survey, which we did cover in another video, though I think it's worth revisiting as it pairs well with the reporting of the previous two surveys. The survey was reported on at great length by the Financial Post, which told us that 56% of Canadians had postponed their home buying due to higher rates, and that 51% of those 56% would be returning when the bank cuts rates, seemingly indicating that's about a quarter of the population that would be flooding into the market the minute the Bank of Canada cuts rates. However, a very brief read of the first paragraph of the survey,
I don't have time for that,
showed that the survey was discussing only the 27% of Canadians that had been active in the market. And of that 27%, 56% had postponed their search. And of that 56%, only 51% would be jumping back in when the bank cuts rates. So, of the, say, 27 people that had been active in the market, 15.1 of them postponed their search, and of that 15.1, only 7.7 or 8% of the total respondents in the entire survey will be returning when the Bank of Canada cuts rates, which, as you can imagine, is a far, far cry from the 51% of the 56% as reported by the Financial Post. So, 3 polls, 2 months, all presented by the Canadian media in a manner that would suggest there are hordes and hordes of Canadians ready to just jump into the market the minute rate cuts come. Except none of the polls actually say this.
Who gives a
Well, it does matter. As we've seen so many times on this channel, we kind of expect the real estate boards, the usual suspects, to push a narrative regardless of the data. But one would hope that the media, at least one media outlet, would perform a little better, would take at least a first glance into the actual polls. So much of the data from these polls, particularly the one coming from Royal LePage and reported on by the Financial Post, are blatantly disconnected from the data in the actual polls.
Who gives a
But I digress. As we showed, 3 polls, 2 months, all presented by the media in a manner that would indicate that the real estate market is going to take off and take off big the minute rate cuts start coming down the pike. Yet, a closer look at the data says that that's not even close to the case. That's not even close to what this data actually says. Regardless, the key takeaway from the reporting on these polls is to do your own research. When you see a poll reported by the media, take a look to see if they link to the poll, as many of them do not, and then try to find the poll yourself, as the poll usually shows a much more clear picture than that which is being reported by our media. With that said, we will continue to track these polls on this channel. Click like and subscribe if you want to get those updates, but for now, thanks so much for watching.